Hi, everybody. It's your host of Freedom to Fight, and you're a Mathis. Um, I needed to switch it up a little bit, so I think I might sit over here on my couch for, some of these intros, some of these episodes. I don't know. I feel restricted in my usual place because the lighting, I can't seem to get the lighting. Um, And I, want to talk to you as casually as possible because um, I have a heavier episode to share with you. Um, First of all, let me talk about my guest. I have followed Richard Grannon's work for the past year and a half, 2 years, and I found his work through YouTube, but it was at a time in my life that I really, 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 really needed it. So I feel like I've got a special connection to him in that way, that he's already helped me through a lot of healing. And um, any trauma healing that I've done has helped me move more on my path. And so I can contribute some of my progress and success of the show to him. So I just want to share that in previous episodes, I've talked about my family dynamic. I made a recap about recap number 5 is about narcissistic family abuse and other forms of abuse. And I'm very familiar with that. And that's why I wanted to invite Mr. Grannon on my show and talk to him about how he's impacted my life, and talk to all of you about his expert knowledge in narcissism. It's an epidemic. I'm not sure how to address this crisis, but it is a problem in many people's lives, and I don't think that we talk about it enough, or enough people know what it is. And that's really my intention behind this episode. And I want you to get to know Richard Grannon. He's an important person to know. Even through my interview process with him and afterwards, he was impactful. Our interview hit me pretty deeply and made me do some more self-reflection. So I hope that you get something out of this episode and out of what he has to share. He's got great wisdom. So without further ado, I introduce to you episode 9 of season 3, Richard Grannon. He's a CPTSD coach and narcissism expert. Thanks for listening. Hi, everybody. It's Anura Mathis, host of Freedom to Fight, and I have an amazing guest on my show today. I am a huge fan. I've watched a lot of your videos. It's helped me a great deal. It's helped me with my clients. There's a huge fan base over here on my side in Colorado. So Cool. Richard Grannon is a CPTSD coach. CPTSD stands for complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. He helps people heal from narcissistic abuse, including myself. He's an author. He's a YouTuber. He's a lot of things. So I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
He's a lot of things. You should ask my ex-girlfriends about that. They'll give you all kinds of adjectives. I originally started working online in 2005. I was working as a self-defense instructor, and my online presence was teaching martial arts. And that was until 2012, when YouTube banned my channel for being too violent. I was teaching people how to defend themselves too violently. And then I moved over into teaching psychological and emotional forms of self-defense and helping people to recognize narcissists and psychopaths and to overcome from being in relationships with them.
I had no idea that you had a different channel. That's very
Yeah, for a
interesting
while.
because I haven't posted any videos of myself training or fighting or any, but I plan to. So I wonder if I'll have any
Hmm.
issues with that.
No, you'll be fine. Just there's certain things that you shouldn't do on YouTube that I was doing that I realize in hindsight I shouldn't have done. Yeah, you should post videos of you training, and if I get over to America, you can shoot a video. We'll have a role, and then you can shoot a video of you putting me into various BJJ submissions. What belt are you in BJJ?
I'm brand new. I'm at the beginning. I've got 2 stripes on my white belt, but that doesn't.
But you are a wrestler, right?
Yes, and I train in Muay Thai as well, but I don't. I haven't trained in a little while, like a couple of months,
Uh-huh.
and I know that the belts indicate, beginner level or skill level, but I don't have any issue when I take a break from BJJ and then coming back. Nothing is lost, and I
Yeah,
actually improve. So,
yeah,
um, yeah,
yeah.
I'm pretty confident in my skill level.
That's good. How long were you wrestling for?
Same amount. So I'm pretty new to martial arts. I didn't train as a kid
Ah,
at
okay.
all. I started training in
Ah, okay.
yeah. I started training in 2021. And then I started the podcast in 2022. So just a year after.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Very cool.
no competition experience either. I was a distance runner in grade school and high
Yeah,
school, but no competition under my belt yet. Well,
it'll come in time. In time, it'll come.
certainly, I'm excited to jump back into that and to fight my guests. It'll be a fun
That's what you
experience.
should be doing.
Yeah,
It's a great hook for the podcast to be like every time I interview somebody, the first 3 minutes of the podcast is me. It's me
just
wrestling
fighting
with
them.
them and
Yeah,
putting them in arm bars.
especially men. um, well, my first question for you is why you chose this path. I've listened to a ton of your videos. Actually, every time I open my phone, I see your face. It's funny now that we're connected. You're just everywhere. But you've helped me in so many ways. So I'm curious what led you on this path.
Um, well, I was getting a lot of questions from clients relating to emotionally manipulative and emotionally abusive relationships, and so I started to make content that was addressing their concerns, and the content took off. That was what people were mainly focused on when I started in 2012. And then I started to reflect on my own life and my own experiences as far as setting boundaries with people, being assertive, um, being a people pleaser, and narcissistic abuse. And I found that there was quite a lot of it in my own life. So that's how I went down that road.
Hmm. I guess same here. I've experienced trauma throughout my entire life. It's kind of what I know best, just toxic relationships and how to get out of them.
Hmm.
And um, my biggest toxic relationship is with my family. And I realize they're going to be listening to this, but it's important for me to tell the truth. So I just kept people pleasing. I kept trying to fix relationships that were not going to be fixed. It's just not solely
Mm.
my responsibility. But you helped me kind of break away from that for my final time. I'm not sure how I discovered you. I think YouTube just connected me. I listened to Dr. Ramadi and a ton of other um, narcissistic abuse resources, coaches and therapists and what have you. But that was really, you were really instrumental in helping me move out of that relationship.
I'm
So
glad to hear that.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you got out.
Yeah, me too. And of course, it takes a while to fully recover. And
thought about, reconnecting with them because they're my family, but family is not defined solely by blood. You can create a family out of your friends and your community, and that would be much better for me because being around people that are not willing to heal, I start mirroring their behavior and just kind of letting things go. And it's important for me to stay on this path. So, yeah, just wanted to share that.
Narcissistic, the abusive relationships inside a family unit, sometimes what can happen is if you have a narcissistic borderline parent, their greatest fear is this abandonment terror when they think someone is abandoning them. And so sometimes what can happen with like a borderline mother or a borderline father is when the child is growing and they're supposed to move towards that adulthood state, when the parent detects they're picking up tools of agency, they punish them and cripple them.
Yeah.
Did you see that within the cult? Did you see
it happened a lot? Whenever I showed initiative that was my own, that wasn't promoted or suggested by the cult leader, they immediately clamped down on me. That happened all the time. Anytime you did something that wasn't approved of. I mean, it's like, imagine being in sort of a communist system where you want to have your own idea about something. And have you checked with the party yet? Have they approved of this thing? It's exactly the same.
Well, I'm not going to transition to martial arts just yet. I'm going to save that. But I'm getting nervous again. I'm just going to calm down.
Don't think too much.
Yeah.
That's what raises the anxiety, is when you start thinking too much.
And this is what I do. I talk to people. This is my third season. So, yeah. So I understand why you chose this path. And I want to know what's the most important lesson you've learned in your career. Yeah.
In my professional career, the most important lesson I've learned.
Yeah.
Wow. I think the most important lesson, I think, is around truth and honesty. I think over time, because I've been doing this since 2012, so that's 2024, we're 12 years in. I think what it's made me realize is just how important it is to tell the truth when you don't have to. So everybody can get things done faster by manipulating the truth, or by omitting pieces of reality, or by being manipulative, or by holding truth back. Whenever we manipulate reality, or manipulate a story, or spin a story, or hold truth back, you're really taking away the other person's ability to consent properly. And I think in our culture, it's seen as kind of okay, kind of lie a little bit, spin things a certain way, get what you want. Why not just lie a little bit to get what you want? And I think the damage that even small lies can do across a long period of time, across a longer timeline, they make themselves apparent. So I think the biggest lesson is trying to be authentic, trying to be honest, and telling the truth on every level in every way that you can becomes very important.
Huh. That's a very important lesson to learn. That's what I try to practice, is truth. Actually, Anura is, it's Tibetan, it's a Sanskrit name, and I've found many meanings throughout my lifetime. The meaning I know of my name, everybody that doesn't know this yet, means charm of the heart. But I discovered that it also means wisdom, or knowledge rather, and also truth. So that's always been my default, is to tell the truth, and I get a lot of hate for it, but that's okay. I think it's the right thing to do, to tell the truth. Tell the truth about yourself, about what you need to work on, and just always tell the truth, because otherwise you're living in darkness and manifesting from that or producing from that. And that's kind of why I left my family dynamic, because I was the only one telling the truth. So and all of my relationships, I was just replicating that. So in my martial arts family, the first few gyms that I joined, I was a part of three different gyms. They're all associated with each other, but people were not telling the truth, and the consequence of that nearly costed me my life. I sustained a really severe concussion, and I've done some processing about this, but there were mistakes that happened, or maybe there weren't mistakes, and some actions that were taken that put me in danger. And I was just getting hit too hard, because people realized that I was pretty new at martial arts, but I was getting promoted very quickly. So I was getting a lot of attention. I'm a woman, I'm a Black woman. On top of that, like, there was nobody there. Like, there's one other Black person there, but there was nobody there like me. And that happens in group settings sometimes. People attack me, and it's an experience that I don't have to see it as an attack, but I need to I need to ensure that I don't fall into codependency. I don't just assume a role that somebody puts me in. And I was doing that. And so people were being triggered by me and just hit me too hard. It was just unreasonable, how hard they were hitting me. I went to the hospital once I realized.
This is in. Sorry, carry on.
I went to the hospital a few times, and the first time I went, I was bleeding out of my ears because I was getting hit in the head too hard. I just wanted to mention that part. Go right ahead.
You're talking about Muay Thai. You're not talking about BJJ.
Certainly, yeah. Muay Thai, just training, just counting numbers like we normally do. We weren't even sparring. But sometimes when I was sparring with some of the women there, they were intentionally hitting me harder than we were even instructed. You know, sometimes we'll say, hey, we'll go 50% or 70% or what have you. But people were hitting me as hard as including men, as hard as they possibly could. And that resulted in this severe concussion.
Yeah.
I was hospitalized one time. The hospital that I went to, I don't think that they really knew how to treat concussions, because I went 3 times total. One of those times I was hospitalized, and it took a long time for me to recover. And now that I've done some research and talked to other professionals, it really shouldn't have played out that way. But again, I was not in a safe environment. I should have had the support of the people that were teaching me. And instead, I was just left out in the cold.
How long? Sorry. Go on.
No, go ahead.
How long have you been training Muay Thai for?
Same amount of time. I started all 3 at the same time, really. So 2021.
Why is anybody hitting you in the head at all if you're in your first 4 years of training?
You know, I've got some more processing to do. I realized just touring other gyms, not all of them function that way, you know. So
No, you shouldn't be getting hit in the head at all, unless you've consented to sparring. With Muay Thai sparring, punching the head was traditionally like one of the lowest scoring ways to get a point, which is why the Thai kick and knee and elbow before they punch. So I really can't see why you were getting hit in the head at all. To get sent to the hospital 3 times is bordering on criminal.
Uh,
It's criminal negligence. If you come into my gym, I'm responsible for your safety. If you get hospitalized or sent to hospital once, I should be making sure that never happens again. And you're saying these are training drills, and during a training drill, somebody would hit you in the head with a gloved fist.
with the pads, I did consent to sparring, but I was not. I only sparred a few times. I really didn't
Why?
realize. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
No, it's okay.
yeah, let me interrupt you here because
Sure,
this story is all over the map.
sure.
Why were you getting hit in the head with pads? Who's hitting you in the head with? Do you mean like a big, thick Muay Thai pad,
Yes,
the big one that you need? And that, and who was hitting you in the head with a pad?
just my instructors. So I
What was the reason given for hitting you in the head?
we that was just how we drilled. That's how I drilled the entire time I
That
trained.
is that is so incredibly dangerous and stupid. You'd be better off being punched bare knuckle. You'd have less brain damage than being whacked in the head by a big, thick Muay Thai pad. It's incredibly dangerous. I have TBI from Muay Thai. They eventually the sac around my brain split, and cranial fluid came out because of let's say dangerous Muay Thai practice. But I was never whacked in the head with a training pad deliberately by an instructor. That we were just sparring too hard. So to be whacked in the head is repeatedly is really dangerous. It's really strange.
I honestly didn't know any better. I didn't have any prior experience, and I didn't know to question it either.
To all the folks watching, don't let anybody hit you in the head. And if they keep doing it, then you can sue them. My skull will never recover. My brain will never recover from the TBI. That's just the nature of brain injuries. We have to protect our skulls. I mean, that's honestly, it sounds bordering on criminal. What you've experienced there to end up with blood coming out of your ears from being hit in the head with a pad. That's
Yeah, it
crazy.
is crazy. And so I went to the hospital 3 times, but it was kind of one after the other. It wasn't I returned to training after the first time I went to the hospital. I
Oh,
went to the ER when I noticed there was something strange going on. I couldn't figure out what it was.
yeah.
Um, and I wasn't admitted. So I was sent home just later on that day. And I communicated that to my sensei and sent paperwork and what have you. And then I just didn't get better. So a few days later, I was rushed to the emergency and then they hospitalized me. So I was there overnight. And oh, this is going to be difficult to talk about.
Legally, you mean?
No, just emotionally.
You don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
We could talk about it off screen if you want.
Yeah. I have talked about it and I've cried. And I want people to know the truth. So I woke up. So I was hospitalized. I don't have some memories of it, but I woke up with oxygen. So they needed to help me breathe. So I was
Has it created a swelling on your brain, or what had happened?
perhaps I think I just I don't know what happened. I remember going into the hospital and getting to my room and then everything from that point to the time I woke up, I don't remember anything.
Did you consider legal action against the club?
I didn't. No. Um,
But you don't train there
I
anymore.
don't. No, and it's been a process. I mean, it really changed my whole life. And I'm advocating for martial arts, but I have to tell the truth that just like anything, there's benefits and consequences. I mean, anything can be good for you or bad for you. It depends on how you're using it. And I was not in a safe
Martial arts and
environment.
no, listen, Muay Thai and MMA and BJJ, I love them, but they're significantly dangerous hobbies. They're way more dangerous than doing lifting weights or going for a run or playing table tennis. I mean, you're literally training to injure each other. I think a lot of this gets swept under the rug. Martial arts are great. It's a lifelong passion of mine. But I think it's high time we have a conversation about proper safety practices, because I hear stories about stuff that goes on in BJJ and judo gyms, and sometimes people they're just being reckless, and they're just taking out whatever frustration they've got in their daily lives on their students, and that's a legal issue. Like these people should be sued and or locked up, because they're inflicting injury on people. It's no good.
I didn't take that route. I needed to see what it was. I needed to step back and see the truth of it. And I was one of 4 women, I think, at the gym. One was the sensei's wife, and from the first day of my training, I started training in a women's self-defense class. So I met her there and met, sensei and the other women that were in that class. I knew she had an issue with me. I knew that there was something there, but I just kind of ignored it. Let me see if I could get her like people pleasing, But she hit me one time in sparring so hard that it split my lip open. I'm like, this is not really what we're supposed to be doing. I'm bleeding everywhere. Like, you're the sensei's wife. You should be instructing me and not trying to beat me up. But there was some sort of jealousy. There was issues in their relationship, and you could tell, people could tell when they were fighting. And she was getting promoted without training. And so I was getting promoted, in front of everybody, and people could see me progressing, and she would get promoted as well. And she wouldn't be coming to training at all, just to keep it balanced. And that was very, very close to the time when I got the concussion. So it was a very profound time in my life to break away from those relationships. It helped me leave my family dynamic as well. But I had to do a lot of reflection. Where are these toxic relationships coming from? My family is still actively engaging in that, and I'm just creating all of these other relationships around me in the same way. So
the codependent narcissist dynamic is two not very strong selves interacting with each other in a dyad that fits hand in glove. The pathologies fit together. Not always. There'll be people who watch this and be like, no, I was completely healthy when I started the relationship. And I would say maybe, or maybe you don't realize where you were sick.
So hard to talk about, but important to talk about.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about martial arts, I want to know more about your training and what I should know. I mean, apparently there's still so much that I don't know that I should be expecting from my instructors.
You want to know my martial arts background?
Yeah. What did you train in, and what did you teach? And yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, my parents thought I was too effeminate because I liked sitting around listening to music and writing poetry. So they sent me to karate to toughen me up. And then within about 5 or 6 years of realizing I'd turned into a martial arts nut, they were telling me to calm down and stop training. So first they were like, start training. And then afterwards they went, stop training. It's too much. So they sent me to karate when I was 9. It was Shito-Ryu karate. I was doing that. And then I started doing spirit combat jiu-jitsu. This is in Portugal. When I was a kid, I grew up in Portugal. So I was doing karate, spirit combat jiu-jitsu. In my teens, I moved on to judo, ninjutsu, and aikido. So I was a really keen aikido, ninjutsu, and judo player. And then when I was about 18, which would have been about 1996, the UFC was blowing up. Everybody wanted to do MMA, but it wouldn't be called MMA back then. It would have been called Shuto or Vale Tudo. So when I went to university in Birmingham, I found like a gym where I could do shoot fighting, and they eventually had a BJJ instructor come in there. And then I started training Muay Thai when I was 18 and fell in love with Muay Thai as well. Then I did other bits and pieces. I've always had Chinese friends, so I was doing qigong, some tai chi, some Wing Chun. Occasionally, I would do Lao Ga with some mates of mine here in Liverpool. But usually, we just chop it up. We just get together and be like, "What do you do if this happens? What do you do if this happens? We do this. We do this. We do this." Eventually, one day, I was working in an office, and I worked with two bouncers from Liverpool, and I told them I was into martial arts, and they were into lifting weights and taking steroids, and they were like, that shit doesn't work." And I was like, "Yeah, it does." So I showed them some stuff in the coffee room on a break, and they were like, "Oh, that's cool, lah. Come down to the gym on a Saturday and we'll do a session." So I started doing these informal sessions on Saturday mornings with a group of doormen, just showing them bits and pieces, and then we would spar a little bit. It was all very friendly and nice. Do a bit of sparring, do some pads, and then that developed into me working the door. I became a bouncer, and then on the side, I was teaching street fighting, basically how to control and restrain people. I started a company called streetfightsecrets.com. Most of the customer base was in America. That began in 2005, I think. And what I was doing is I would run a forum on a YouTube channel, and I would ask the American audience, "What are your questions? What do you want to see? What should we look at?" And then I would try and answer those questions. Basically, that project ran for about 10 years, and it got good. You know, we got some good clients from all over the world. But I think one of the proudest ones was the air marshals. They're not that important now, but right after 9/11, it was very important to learn how to fight in close range environments and to do everything you can to fight without using a firearm because you're in a pressurized cabin. But they really were coming to me more for the psychology side of it. They wanted to teach people how to be decisive and aggressive, but not psychotic. So I was helping them with that. And what I was teaching was I would basically I was teaching a syllabus that would be based on questions that were asked me. If I was teaching people one-on-one, I would just say to them, what do you want? What do you want to learn how to do? And then we would develop a system for them individually based on their body, their psychology, and their objectives. Yeah, I did that professionally for about 10 years before I switched back into psychology.
That's pretty fascinating. I had no idea you had this experience until you emailed me about it, but I have a mentor, I guess he's not mentoring me anymore, Dr. Michael Ellison in Texas. He helped me quite a bit in my career, and he's on my season 2, my first episode. He's a trauma expert, and he also has a black belt at BJJ. I had no idea, so this is a repeat of that.
So he can heal people, or he can deliver trauma to people, depending
Yeah,
on what
certainly.
he feels like.
I don't know if he does this anymore. He's been in the field for 50 years and has taught me quite a bit. So I'm very grateful to him, and really influenced me to start this show and to talk about trauma. And he gave me a teaching position in my graduate program. He developed a PhD course in psychopharmacology and neuroscience. And I love neuroscience. So he just said, "Hey, do you want to help me teach this class?" So yeah, I took on that role and developed a mnemonic to teach like the 10 most important principles relevant to the PhD program at my university. The students there would take like a comprehensive exam at the end of their coursework. And so I made a teaching tool to teach about neuroscience. he's given me a lot of
Very cool.
opportunities, and I'm giving him a shout out, Dr. Ellison. How has your martial arts training and instruction influenced your mental health? How has that impacted your mental health?
How's it impacted my mental health? I mean, there's negative and positive. I think it's easier for me to walk around in the world with the goggles on of being a psychologist than it is to walk around in the world with the goggles on of being like a fight instructor. So when I was walking around with fight instructor goggles on, I was a lot more anxious. I was a lot more worried about threat. I was worried about um, getting into fights and that kind of thing. And if, I was younger, of course, as well, but I would be more disposed to responding to situations with violence because um, that was my daily bread. As a psychologist, um, I'm not in that mindset, and if somebody is being confrontational with me or whatever, I'm viewing it through the lens of trauma, and I find it a lot easier to be compassionate and to formulate an adult response that doesn't involve me headbutting them as hard as I can across the car park because the police don't like that. It makes them very angry. So there's that was the negative side of martial arts impact on my mindset. It bred a sort of an insecurity in me. The positive side wasn't the martial arts, but the philosophies behind it led me into some very, very interesting areas. My first studies into philosophy, my first forays into philosophy were Eastern philosophy, governed by Japanese martial arts, um, Shinto, Zen Buddhism, Mikyo Buddhism, that kind of thing. Things that would be around ninjutsu, jujitsu, the history, and aikido as well. So that was positive, very very positive for my mental health.
Yeah, I guess everything has a positive or negative impact. It kind of depends on how you use it, especially for
Sure.
me. And um, I feel that martial arts has allowed me to come into myself. I'm still coming into myself, but my role in my family, I'm the black sheep. I'm second to youngest child, and I'm the only therapist or person even interested in this path whatsoever. But
Yeah.
it's helped me kind of break away from that, including creating and producing the show. I'm I'm still kind of breaking out of that, but I feel like the more that I face my fears around public speaking and being seen, the more that I just advance in every aspect of my life. So it's been a catalyst to my healing and given me a lot of reflection on what's happened to me and how to prevent that. So I want to talk about narcissism. My goal is to educate my audience as best as I can. I'm sharing personal stories and these recaps that I'm doing and trying to do that as best as I can in my interviews, but it is difficult to talk about the abuse I've experienced. I will mention that in part of me pursuing martial arts, I was looking for self-defense because I had just gotten out of my the first physical abusive relationship I had ever been in. All of the others were just mainly emotional. My dominant hand, my right hand, got broken in that relationship, and just tons of things happened to me that I didn't think would ever happen. And so I was looking for some security in some way. I needed to ensure that I could protect myself. So kind of getting lost in all of that. But I want to talk about narcissism and what you do. I want to educate my audience on what you do and your perspectives on narcissism.
When you start moving into a phase of open abuse, it's no longer covert, you're no longer just dealing with passive aggression, you're dealing now with consistent and regular, even daily forms of abuse. That could be overt, it could be shouting, it could be threatening, it could be humiliation, it could be covert, it could be stonewalling, it could be passive aggression, it could be silent treatment, it could be making the ambience that you're in very, very uncomfortable. Then I think it's time to accept that you are in a relationship that is at least emotionally abusive, if not narcissistically abusive, and it's right and good for you to start looking to exit that relationship.
How do you treat narcissism? You make lots of YouTube videos to educate people on what that is and how to treat that. So I guess I still don't have a question. My question is, how do you heal from narcissistic abuse? How do you heal from narcissistic abuse?
Very slowly and very, very carefully. It's hard. It's hard to heal from narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse, you could say, damages the systems by which you would normally heal from other forms of trauma. So there is like a natural healing system that operates to heal from trauma, and narcissistic abuse damages it, corrupts it, and causes it to slow down. This is partly because the narcissistically abusive relationship fractures the self. So your sense of self will be much weaker after a narcissistically abusive relationship. It'll be much harder to make decisions. It's much harder for you to really even know what you want or to know who you are, because your sense of self has been under direct, premeditated, overt and covert attack for the length of time of the narcissistic abusive relationship. So in a way, the narcissistic abuse healing process is both trying to take the client to a place where they can feel safe, and then start to slowly and carefully untangle the parts of the self that have become fractured and the parts of the self that have become fused with the narcissistic abuser. Because after the relationship ends, we still carry a part of the abuser inside of our heads, and that needs to be dealt with as well.
Certainly, and that's the stage that I'm at, disconnecting from that voice. I should have asked you, what is narcissistic abuse? I should have started there. So yeah.
Well, yeah. Narcissistic abuse, I guess, is a sort of a subtype of emotional or psychological abuse. So the supra term would be emotional abuse, psychological abuse. What makes it narcissistic abuse is that the emotional abuse is occurring at the hands of somebody who either has narcissistic personality disorder or very, very pronounced narcissistic defenses. The narcissism itself means that the person is very attached and fused to a grandiose, false, delusional version of themselves and a false version of reality. You, as the target, are part of that false version of reality. So they can only relate to you in a very distorted, pathological, delusional, and psychotic way. So they never really relate to you. They relate to their internalized version of you. But their inner world is sick. It's chaotic. It's pathological. So you then become a part of that sick, pathological landscape for them. That's why they accuse you of things that you would never do or never have done. They confuse you with an ex-girlfriend or an ex-boyfriend because we're all interchangeable, and you can have some really crazy making conversations and arguments with them. The nature of the abuse, whether intentionally or not, is it damages your ability to make judgments, and it damages your ability to tell fantasy from reality. Because when you're in a dyad, when you're in a duo with somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder, they pull you into their world. And it's like being dipped in a corrosive acid, and it corrodes boundaries, it corrodes critical thinking, and it corrodes our capacity to be confident in our assessment of reality. So you lose a lot of confidence, and you become insecure, and you become confused. And in your confusion, you seek leadership, and then they offer you that leadership, but they're leading you to the slaughterhouse.
I'm hoping to explain the difference between NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and sociopathy, because I'm seeing the lines are the line is pretty thin. And please correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, can you tell me the difference between NPD and sociopathy?
I think nowadays we probably don't really use sociopathy anymore. I think the general consensus is we should say psychopathy, because for various reasons. One of them being that there does seem to be evidence pointing that there's a fairly heavily genetic component. We have different types of psychopathy. So what we previously would have called sociopathy would probably now called psychopathy factor 2. The main difference, your psychopath has very, very low affect, low fear. Their perception of reality isn't as distorted as a narcissist is. It is sick, it is pathological, but they're probably closer to reality than the narcissist is. They're not vain or concerned about their reputation or their public image in the way that a narcissist would be. They're highly criminal, so they're boundary breaking, they're law breakers. One way in which they're similar to the narcissist is they have no empathy. They really, really don't care what other people suffer or experience, because they're extraordinarily goal orientated. They're very, very motivated by the things that they want. And they're typically Machiavellian, which means that they will do anything to get what they want. And if anybody stands in their way, then they'll just take them out, and they will have no remorse or guilt or regret about doing so.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think I've encountered both throughout my lifetime. And yeah, that makes a lot more sense, that their sense of reality is still intact. The types of people that be diagnosed with either look very different. Now that you've clarified that, it's clicking. The people that I've been associated with, and I think that relationship that I mentioned that turned physically abusive was really with the latter. I don't think that I was in a relationship where he was trying to save face in any way. He really was very manipulative in the way that I got into that relationship, just putting on a front. But I don't think he cared whatsoever about his image after. So yeah, that clarifies that for me. I am still healing, and in the sense that I keep replicating these relationships. Like, I'm in one now in this community. I'm one of the only Black people here, and maybe that's it didn't matter that much in Texas, but it does here. And I'm just noticing how I'm responding to how people are responding to me, and it took some.
Is Colorado very, very white compared to Texas?
Very much so. Actually,
like 98% white people?
Yeah. And I live in a wealthy community, and so I really stick out. But I didn't realize that this would be such a problem. You know, people come to Colorado to hike and in nature and whatever, but it's not friendly. People are not friendly here. I'm from the South. People are
Okay.
conditioned to be friendly, if they don't like you,
Where are
but
you from?
I'm from Dallas area, Dallas, Texas. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yes, I've been to Dallas. I've trained in some gyms in Dallas. Yes. It wasn't quite like what I saw on TV.
Were you in Dallas?
I was in Dallas in the probably October, November of 2017. I did a seminar there.
Interesting. Huh.
And I stayed 4 or 5 days, and they said to me, "Be careful, the weather can change quickly here." And I said, "Oh, shut up. It'll be fine." And then you could be by the pool, sunbathing in the morning, and then by 3 o'clock that afternoon, need a winter jacket. It's a completely crazy place as far as weather goes around that time of year. But yeah, I've never been to Colorado. My sister lived there. She lived in Durango, and she said like it's she said it's very, very white. It's a super, super white place. It's just people going snowboarding, skiing, hiking in the mountains, and yeah. So is it you say it's a problem you being there? Is that a racial problem? Are you
Yeah,
is there a bit of passive aggression?
um probably a combination of both, but I I think it's the now the times, like I moved here in 2020, so pandemic times.
Uh-huh.
And so the level of fear is, raised. But I feel like I spent some time in Texas last year as well with my family and returned. And
Okay.
I people don't even look at me at the grocery store here. Like people are their level of fear and anger towards me is exceptional. I've
Why are they fearful of you?
I
What? You don't seem very scary.
I'm not. I'm very friendly. But no, it's I've never had this response before. I've been followed quite a bit, had to get restraining orders. I've had people try to attack me. Someone broke my window last year, my driver's side window. So it's not something I'm used to. And not something I expected.
Hmm.
And I didn't think that, being one of the only few Black people here would be a problem. But apparently, the town that I live in was formed by a hate group, the KKK. And then the town that's adjacent to me was formed by a different hate group. I think it's just the history of this state. And I mean, of course, not
I
everybody
wasn't
hates.
aware the KKK established towns. You're saying the KKK established the town that you live in?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know they did that.
I didn't know until after I moved here, but yeah, that's what the natives, locals are
That's the
saying.
history.
Yeah. There used to be a sign that says the KKK welcomes you to the city. So,
Oh my God.
I'm glad
Oh
you're
my
finding
God.
this to be funny.
Yeah, well, yeah, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't the only place that I've spent a significant amount of time in America is in California. And it's where I go is North County. It's a really, really white area. When I was traveling around America, because when I went in 2017, I tried to hit every American city. I did notice the temperature go up and down, especially around if you're only in a city for 3 days, it's hard to gauge exactly what you're seeing. Um, but yeah, even in 2017, you can see um, a sort of a let me choose my words very carefully here. Lanes for people based on race. Did I get away with that?
Yes.
I fought hard not to say soft segregation. But it's a very America has such a complicated history, and it's still not gotten. It's still not assimilated all of its trauma. Let's say effectively.
Certainly. I make the comparison between narcissism and racism. I think it's just another form of narcissism, right? I mean,
I think I can't see. Well, so I'm not sure how anybody can legitimately be racist. Like truly racist. Like if we were off camera and you said something, you made a joke about white people, I don't see that as racist. I don't see, it's like, yes, some things are different in different cultures and it's kind of funny. Or like if you make a joke about whatever, we go to Spain, you make a joke about French people or Spanish, it's that, but real hatred and fear of an ethnic group because they look different. If it's not narcissism, it's a pathology. It's definitely pathological. Now, when it becomes active and it's like, we need to go and hurt somebody because they look different, that's not just narcissism. Narcissists couldn't be bothered. That's narcissism comorbid psychopathy. That's a psychopathic narcissistic mindset. So you mentioned the KKK. Would you believe when I was raised in Portugal, I went to the cinema and I went to see a film called Mississippi Burning, which is an old movie. I don't know if you ever saw it. It's a good one, but it's a tough watch. And I didn't know America. I was a kid. I was 10. I shouldn't have been let into that movie because it was intense. So I went back to my mum and she said, "What did you think of the film?" And I was like, "Well, it was like an episode of The Twilight Zone, because in Portugal we used to get old American series, black and white Twilight Zone, which would present a fictional, horrifying thing. And I understood it as sci-fi. I was like, it's a sci-fi movie where a group of people go around and attack black people because they are black." And I was like, it was good, but it just wasn't very believable. And she went, what do you mean? I said, "It's just the premise, like it's dumb, like nobody's going to do that for bit." And she's like, "That's not sci-fi, that happened, that's a real story." And I couldn't wrap my head around it. In the same way, now as an adult, when I try and think about it, I think if you take any population of people, we have to understand that a percentage of that population is going to be very, very severely mentally ill. And yeah, it has to be a form of mental illness. It has to be.
Weirdly racist via the back door.
Of course it is.
Because if what it's saying is, well, I don't want to get in trouble. Fuck it. Mm-hmm. White Western people are the only people powerful enough to hurt this world. They're terribly evil. They're the most evil, and therefore they're the best at being evil. It's still a white supremacism. This is where Slavoj Žižek, when he talks about this, he gets into trouble, where he's like, no, I want Native Americans to be able to be evil. I want them to be able to embrace their capacity for genocide and torture, or Africans, or whoever the minority group is, because if we own evil, if we colonize evil and make it only our own thing, it can still be a passive flex. We're the ones who did this. You see all this terrible, we did this because we were the only, whilst you were in alignment with nature and being at one with the earth, oh, very nice, you noble savages. We were the ones who did all this damage. It's still a kind of a weird flex in a way. So yeah, I don't buy it. The whole white guilt thing. Like, come on, it's racism. It's fundamentally racism. You can't escape that.
You can't be mentally sane and happy and be engaging in that type of thing. Even here in Europe, we'll have like white on white hatred. I don't know if you know about the Yugoslavian wars, but if I showed you a bunch of ex-Yugoslavians, you wouldn't tell them apart, but they hate each other on racial, genetic lines. Which is, you'd be like, there's a bunch of white people killing each other, saying they're a different race, and you can't see it, you can't observe it. The only other thing I've thought about this recently is it's very lightweight philosophically, because we're talking about an aesthetic. So you look at me now, and you'll see like a pinkish white man. I couldn't look any whiter, but you don't know what my genetic profile is. I don't know what your genetic profile is. So you say I'm a Black American woman, and I go, okay. That's aesthetics. That's all I can see. I don't know. You've probably had this conversation with, in America, the amount of mixing genetically that's gone on. When you look at somebody's actual racial profile, America is a fascinating place. You might look one way, but actually a lot of you. So then it's aesthetics. I'm like, you're going to kill people over aesthetics because you don't know what's in their blood. You've no idea, but they'll kill you because of, I can see And because I can see, I know. That's the narcissistic component. It's the entitlement of saying, because I see you, I know you. That's absurd. You can't know somebody by looking at them.
Well, I listened to your interview with Mark Vicente, and shared it with a few people, but I've had experiences with cults, and I would say that anyone that's still participating in this racism game, they're part of a cult. They're just conditioned to behave in this way without really thinking about it. I'm just following orders.
Yeah, and I think cults, they form spontaneously. Like, human beings are culty creatures. So we make them, and we seem to make them when we feel under pressure. So if there's economic strain, cults form, and then enemies are sought, because a cult only holds together. It's pathological, so it only holds together in the presence of an enemy. I mean, so let's be disgusting for a moment. Say the KKK got what they wanted. They wanted, I think they wanted the total eradication of all black people that white people had brought to that country. They were like, we brought you here, now we don't want you here. Let's terrorize all black people until they make the decision to leave. If they had gotten what they wanted by magic, I don't think the KKK would have just like taken off the hoods the next day and gone, well, we did it, boys. Well done, we won. They'd have to move to the next target. And I know once they'd sorted out all ethnic groups and made it white, and America's pure white in this fantasy, it wouldn't end. They then start questioning who's pure white. You're not white enough. And I've had this experience from white supremacists who'll say things like, it was an internet troll. He was saying to me, well, you're not really white. And I was like, what does that mean? He said, you've got Irish blood in you. You've got gypsy blood in you. You're a mudblood. So as white as I am, this will fall below the purity test of a narcissistic psychopath who's determined to find division, who's determined to find something impure and unclean that needs cleansing. So yeah, it would never have ended. It's because it's a pathology. So yes, to your point, this is cult-like thinking. It's very cultish thinking.
And I've experienced racism throughout my whole lifetime, but just nothing like this. Nothing like I need to go to a courthouse to get a restraining. Police officers have told me you need to get a restraining order on these people. I've done it multiple times. It's mind blowing. So it's out of hand here. People are not mixing well. If it's not me, of course, it would be the other people of color, like you're saying, and on and on and on. And I don't see.
Yeah, they would.
I don't see us healing from that
sorry.
here. I don't see the environment here changing. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if they were all the black people are out of your town, let's assume it's your town and not Colorado, because people in the comments will be like, well, most of us are lovely. I went to Denver in Colorado and I met some nice people there. But let's say it's your town, theoretically. Even then, if all black people or all non-white people left, then they would be looking for people who had Irish heritage, Italian heritage, and the cleansing goes on. It's these, once the purity tests start, they never end, because nobody's pure enough. Nobody's ever pure enough, which is why all totalitarian states ultimately collapse, because everyone fails the loyalty and purity test across a long enough timeline, especially when all your designated enemies and outsiders, when the stock of them depletes, you have to find something else to feed on. But no, I don't see, you say you don't see your town healing. I don't really see America healing for, I think it's going to be hundreds of years.
A lot of people are in denial. I mean, some people just don't believe that this is going on, and that, I mean, they're gaslighting. It's not that big of a deal. This happened, decades ago, or we're not in the 1960s, or whatever they say, and people are just denying the reality of it. And we can't heal anything unless we tell the truth.
You said people are denying the reality of it. Who's denying the reality of
White
it?
men.
No, don't. No, that's a trap. It was a trap. Don't fall into it. Yeah, no, I think like if it's an inconvenient truth, and you're telling the truth, then you can get punished for that. I don't. I'll tell you an experience. We're on a tangent here. When I was in America, not in 2017, but I came back the following year, and I was in a group, a narcissism group, and I was talking to people, and then the narcissism group ended, and then we went outside of a cafe, and it was a nice summer's evening in Southern California, and I was with some. There was four white ladies talking to me, and they were talking about America and the experience of being in America. And I said, "But you still have racial problems here," and they said, "No, we don't." And I said, "How would you know?
Exactly.
How the fuck would you?"
Exactly.
When I said there's racial problems here, I wasn't saying it's white people that are suffering. I wasn't saying you have them. They're like, there's no race. So that's narcissism. If it's not happening to me, it's not happening. One of the women, brace yourself. This is one of the worst things I ever heard anybody say. Said, "Richard, you don't understand this country. I mean, we gave them a black president." And I was like,
Ooh. Oh no.
What the fuck did you just say to me? What did you just say to me? We, white people, had the grandiosity and were so magnanimous. We gave our black brothers and sisters a black president. I was like, oh, okay. And I after that, I was like, these are clients of mine. So I was like, okay, I just need to find a way to politely exit this conversation, go home and take a shower. But no, I mean, it is a problem. Like it's clearly a problem. It's clearly a problem. Pretending it's not a problem is not going to help. That's like if America's a family and it's just going to pretend that there aren't problems where there are problems. The problems don't magically disappear because you go la la la. This isn't happening. It's happening. It's real.
I also listened to. I should bring up this topic. I love Joe Rogan. He influenced me to start the show. But he had a comedian on his show, and I can't remember his name, but he was talking about as a white man experiencing discrimination, and he's got a lawsuit against. He's got a lawsuit against. I guess some companies that refuse to hire him because he's white, and he's got this, in text, he's got all of this evidence that, when the pandemic started, he just wasn't as relevant. And I have a lot of compassion for anybody that's suffering. But what I'm taking from this, it helped me to have the conversation with other people experiencing this. So he said that
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
No, it's okay. He just experienced severe depression to the extent that he contemplated suicide. And so I think it's interesting that he's able to experience something that people of color have experienced forever living in this country.
Right.
So now we can have the conversation. You know what it feels like to be oppressed. And so yeah. I don't want to minimize his experience in any way, but it's interesting how it's flipping.
Well, it's not good if it happens to anybody. That's Tyler Fisher, I think his name is. Yeah. Tyler Fisher is on Instagram. I've spoken to him a couple of times. Okay. I'm going to do an interview with him at some point. And so I know of him, and I sat down on a documentary made by some guys who've been working in Hollywood for 20, 30 years, cameramen, sound men, directors, writers. And they said that now this is a problem. It's flipped. So there are people who are being told, or it's being inferred, there is a job open, but it's not open to middle-aged white men. We just can't do it right now. We have to fulfill a quota. You're right. It's good that people are getting to experience the other side of what that feels like. But I just don't think that's going to help. I think ultimately all that does is create more resentment. And that's why I'm saying it's hundreds of years in the future before this will be over. Because so now we're in a period where we go, okay, we repressed people because of their color. That's terrible. Or their appearance, their aesthetic. Now we're going to uplift them because of the aesthetic. And I'm like, when are we going to learn the lesson? When are we going to learn that this is not the way to go? Now we're unbalancing it again. What does it create in the future? Another generation of angry white people who then want to take revenge on non-white people. I'm not saying that will happen, but I worry about it.
I think it will. I think that's how it's manifesting, is we're at war with each other, but who's in charge? Some other white people that are in charge, that are oppressing white people. It's creating a dangerous situation. And of course it's always been dangerous, but I've just never experienced this type of hate in my entire life. So we're reaching a peak.
That's a shame. I'm very, very sorry to hear that, because I'm very worried about America. I was very worried in 2017. It just didn't feel, in the cities that I visited, it didn't feel settled. It didn't feel coherent. It didn't feel like there was cohesion or calm there. It felt highly strong. And then it got more and more highly strong as we went through the pandemic and the lockdowns. And yes, you're right. It's white people who are doing this. No, none of the white guys I spoke to denied it. That I was like, well, who's making these decisions? They were like, well, largely it's white people who are the bosses who are saying to us, your pasty face is offensive. You lack melanin. Get out. And it's not that like I don't understand the logic of trying to do that. I just think it's a terrible mistake.
Yeah.
It's not natural. It's not spontaneous. It's not authentic. It's just more performative action that grinds in the trauma of racial segregation, because now we're going to do it this way. Okay, but we're not eradicating it. Well, we should be moving, transcending it, not trying to rectify it within the wrong coordinates. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. I've got a couple of more questions. Feel free to ask me any questions before I ask the final question. But something I just had a question and it went right out. I just want to conclude this subject by saying that I have compassion for anybody experiencing discrimination or oppression in any form. It does quite a number.
Won't do you any good. They'll still come for you in the comments.
They will, but just FYI, I've lived all over this state. I traveled here 2016, and I just kept coming back. And then when I moved here, I've lived in maybe 5 different cities here. They're all racist. And it's pronounced. So I have love for where I live, but I'm going to tell the truth. So that's the truth. So you, Mr. Grannon, you help people heal from narcissistic abuse. And I know that...
I thought you were going to say, and you, Mr. Grannon, you are a racist, aren't you? And I was, yes. Oh, no. Sorry, go on.
Thank you for making me laugh.
This is how you out me on YouTube. You're a racist. Yes. Please carry on.
Thank you for making me laugh. I know that people can heal from narcissistic abuse. I'm one of those people. However, do you believe that people that suffer from narcissism, from NPD, can they fully heal and act as a emotionally empathic person? Can someone heal from narcissism?
You can heal from narcissistic traits. And if you're high in trait narcissism, then certainly, and you have the will to get better, you can get better. If you have full-blown NPD, I don't think we have the technology in the broadest sense in psychotherapy to penetrate the narcissistic defense. So therapy requires you tell your therapist the truth, you're prepared to be vulnerable, and you're prepared to change. Well, those three things are something that are just in the narcissist's top 10 commandments of stuff that you just don't do. You never change, you never tell the truth, and you're never vulnerable. So narcissistic personality disorder, I would claim, is a uniquely psychotherapy resistant personality disorder.
So no. Yeah. That's unfortunate because I don't want to accept that answer. I want to find a way to help everyone heal. But maybe that's just fantasy.
I think it's good that you want to do that. I think it's more so there's yin and yang operation in martial arts, and the yin, typically more female mindset, is cooperation, healing, and equality. The male mind and utopianism. So idealism writ large. You want the world to look nice. You want it to be a better world, and that's good. That's because if everybody's a cynic like I am, and we all live in the world that I create, that would be a shitty world to live in. You need people who are idealistic and utopian. The more yang mindset is more cynical. It's more hierarchical. It lends itself towards competition and therefore elitism. And so what we've just had is a very yang yin conversation. You've said, is there hope for these people? And I've gone, nope. Here's the mechanical reasons why. Like I'm talking about a human being, like it's a car engine that's broken. And then you say, but I want them to get better. And I would say, rather than pushing back on that, I would say, good. It's good that you want them to get better. If maybe there will be technology that develops for them in the future that can penetrate the narcissistic shell. There's no reason not to hope for that.
Certainly. Maybe I can help aid in that. I'm not sure, but I think that's an important aspect of...
Please don't. Just focus on yourself and your own healing. I don't want to see you out there with a cape on saving narcissists, because
I like capes.
You'll end up in therapy for years.
I'm a superhero. Well, if someone comes to me seeking help, then I want to find a way to help them. You know, if they have MPD or anything, you know, Has
a narcissist come to you seeking help?
No.
They'll come pretending they want help so they can steal your resources, but there's some people who like, it's a very good thing to have in your head. It's a question that I train my coaches in: is the person asking for help because they want to change, or is the person asking for your help because they want your attention? Because they look the same, but they're two very, very distinct states, and we have to be wise, and we have to be strong in making that decision. Very important
for me to use my discernment. I'm not a savior. I can't save people. You know, I can help people if they allow me, and that's the extent of it. And I really wasn't doing that in my clinical relationships. I was doing that in my personal relationships, trying to help people and save people. And you know, what can I give up about myself so that I can help you? And that's a service to everybody.
Did you ever read any sci-fi books?
Some. I can't think of a single sci-fi book.
There's a book.
Yeah.
There's a book. It's called The Parable of the Talents. It's by a woman called Octavia Butler. She is a Black American feminist, and she wrote a book about a post-apocalyptic world in which she creates her own cult in which she tries to save everybody or anybody she comes into contact with. I highly recommend it. Parable of the Talents. It's a really good sci-fi book. You would probably you'd get a lot from it.
Okay.
There's a lot of lessons in that book.
I feel like I have an aversion to sci-fi. Oh, I don't think I've ever said that out loud. I do like sci-fi, but my relationship with my father is very tough. That's where the narcissistic abuse comes from, and he's a huge sci-fi fan. So I have an aversion to that. Yeah.
Just see this as fiction. People class it as hard sci-fi, but it's not like spaceships and lightsabers. Everything takes place in post-apocalyptic California, and it's a great book.
Okay.
I think you'll really like it. She also has a narcissistic father who is psychologically abusive, and she has to break away from him. It's a good read. It's a good read.
I'll read it. I've got a ton of books in front of me that I'm like, I'll read a couple of pages and switch. Like, I'm not going to get through all of these books. I just have too many. And I have books on my phone I'm listening to too. And anyway, I'm going to ask my final question, but before I do you have any questions for me? It's totally fine if you don't have any questions, but I want to leave room for that.
No, I think I've asked you questions as it came up along the way. If any more spontaneously pop up, I'll let you know.
Okay. Before I ask my final question, is there a reason why you wear your ring on your middle finger?
It's an Oura ring. It's checking my heart rate and body temperature and stuff. I'm supposed to wear it on my forefinger, but it's not comfortable for me there, so I usually wear it on my middle finger.
Same here. I prefer wearing it on my pointer finger, but I like wearing mine on my middle finger, so I can flip people off. If they want to see my ring, I can just flip them off. Good times.
Any excuse.
Well, my final question, because my show is Freedom to Fight, is what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom is the capacity to make the choices and make decisions that I want to make for myself in my own time, free from manipulation, free from interference.
Great answer. As you were saying that, I was thinking, I've wrestled with this term freedom. Like, what does that really mean? I'm a very rebellious person. And I feel like that has been to my demise in some ways, that I was seeking freedom, but really I was just seeking to defy people, I guess, like just don't tell me what to do kind of attitude, which is good, but also it's led me on the other side of what I think freedom is. You know, it led me back into the prison. So I've that my definition of freedom keeps evolving, and it's good to hear everybody's perspective on that. So
yes, you should be aware of becoming oppositionally defiant in an impulsive, unconscious way. There are some fights worth having, but not everybody who tells you or tries to tell you what to do is worth fighting with. You should pick your battles.
No, I find a lot of good in these conflicts that I've had with people. You know, if I can get past, you're doing this to me, and you know, I need to fight you back. Like, fighting can mean gray rocking. You know, it can mean just completely pulling energy back and focusing on something else. And fighting can be fighting for myself, going to therapy, which I've done over many years.
So there's something that can happen in fights and in conflict, and it relates to like Taoist philosophy, coming back to yin yang again. If somebody attacks you and you respond and you begin to fight with them, it could be said that they've chosen the way that you fight, and they've chosen when and how and where you fight. So even when you fight back, they're still manipulating you. There's something to think about. Like, do I need to fight this? Any fight that comes up for me, any confrontation, I know there's a transcendent point to it. There's always going to be a way of transcending the battle itself. And I know that I'll find it in time, I just try to find it as quickly as I can. How do I transcend this conflict? Because beyond the conflict, there's thesis, there's antithesis, then there's always a synthesis. So my advice would be try and find the synthesis, try and transcend it, try and go above it, above your opponent, not through them.
Certainly. Yeah. I have those experiences in training in J, just taking it, observing rather than acting. And I have a spiritual background. I don't really even know how to present that, but one of the first lessons I learned in my spiritual teachings is something called the conscious observer. So taking a perspective of like watching your life as a movie, you're watching your movie and not fully disengaging, but just observing your actions, observing why you respond in one way or another, and gaining some control over your patterns, like not getting sucked into it. I've learned the most from the people that have abused me, honestly. So I hope that my audience can take something from my stories, that I have all of this trauma I'm talking about, but I don't feel like I'm carrying that so much anymore. It's not so heavy, because I can see it from a different perspective. If these things didn't happen, because I don't have control over what did happen, I can't change that past. Right. And I don't really know why it happened, but I can say that it strengthened my values and made me show up in a way that I don't know if I would have otherwise. So
yeah, true. There's always something to be found in the conflict, for sure.
Yeah, certainly. Well, Mr. Grannon, thank you so much for coming on my show. I'm going to end it here.
Hi again. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that episode, and there's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot that I've shared and just a lot of deep, thought-provoking ideas throughout this episode. So let's talk about it more. I'm going to, of course, make a recap for this episode and all of the other episodes. I haven't released the recaps for, but they're coming. Also, go follow Richard Grannon's channels on YouTube, on Instagram. He's an excellent resource to have to understanding narcissism and psychopathy and recovery from these types of relationships. And he's got some programs out there as well. I'll list them in the description box as I normally do. But I think that if you have ever been in these types of relationships, that you'll find great benefit in his wisdom. So go follow him. And I have new episodes coming. I've got some ideas I want to share with you all in the near future. And I just want to say thank you. It is not easy talking about my personal life publicly. It's not easy to be vulnerable, but it's incredibly rewarding. I feel safe to do that. And I hope that all of you feel safe to do that. And I hope that we, have more of these conversations. I think that this is the time to do it. It's time to get honest. It's time to take action, to have our focus, our attention on things that matter and go after those. I am grateful and blessed and all of the adjectives that I created this opportunity for myself to talk so openly about my healing and
I feel lucky. I feel like I could be somewhere else in my life, but I chose this life. And I feel all of your support. So thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the space. And know that it's available to you too. Let's collaborate. Start a podcast. Create some music. Do some stand-up comedy. And if you're a comedian, please come on my show. I'd love to have comedians and musicians on my show. You know, people that are interested in other forms of healing, other forms of art and expression. Reach out to me and we'll have a chat. Thanks again for listening, and new episodes soon. Bye.